So in each lesson, I kind of told you a little bit, we're going to limit the number of new words in each lesson. And so that, the reason is so that the new reader is taking small steps. So they're not going having to leap, but to take small steps. And that as they learn to read. And it makes it very hard for the writer, but it makes it easy for the reader. So I constantly remind my team when they're struggling is you are struggling so the new reader doesn't have to. Okay? So Simon and John, as you are writing next week, you will hear me say a lot. It's hard for you, so it's easy for the new reader, right? And I'm not sure who's going to be writing Monday yet. I know several of you will be, but it's the same thing. So on page 53, there in your middle of the page, it tells you the number of new words per lesson. So the new words, lessons 1 to 3 is 4. Lessons 4 to 22, 6. And remember, that includes the picture words. Now, lessons 22 to 23 to 32, we say 6 words plus 4 forms. Okay? And I'll explain what that means in a minute. This would be a really good thing to remember for Friday. Okay? Most likely, student. So in your team, as you have your team gathered, you will want one person generally, who this will be their task, is to check the new words. That's all they will do for the whole 10 days. Now, that being said, when we do our primer construction, I'll probably be rotating you through a little bit just so you get the feel of how to do that. But the reason for that is you begin to remember, you get into the flow of what's happened so far, and if you keep switching people in and out, then you forget what's come before and what's come after. So it's good to have one team member. If you don't have 2 or 3 consultants or people who have been trained to help you, you need somebody who is not one of the main writers. You need your writing team, and then maybe it's one of the missionaries, or maybe it's somebody else who's familiar with the language, but it doesn't have to be somebody who knows the language. In fact, you're better off if it's someone who doesn't know the language, because I will come at it as a new reader if I don't know the language. I'll say, I don't know that word. I haven't seen that word before. And so then it kind of catch things that for a reader of the language, they just kind of gloss over because they know it already. So things you want to look for in new words. If the word has the new letter, it's new. Okay? Now, a new word may also have all old letters, but it's a word you haven't used before. So then it's also new. Yeah. I think you can use this piece. And so one of the functions of the person doing this is to, as a team finishes their their story. You want to get the writers in the habit of writing down, underlining and writing down their new words in a story. And that makes them conscious of which words they're using. So, and then your new word control person is going to check that, double check it, triple check it. And if it slips by us, Patty will catch it. So she has a little program, but... no, that's my brain. Your brain. Okay? So right now I'm on page 52, hints for checking new words. So the other thing you want to watch for is words that have letters in them that are new that we haven't taught yet. So for instance, if you have the word patu in the lesson and you haven't taught the U yet, then you can't use that word. We also have to watch for clusters. So let's say we have the word mbata. We've taught the M, we've taught the B, but we have not taught the MB as a cluster. So that word cannot be in. Okay? Now, earlier, the other lesson, I told you you could only, we had the word cook, right? But some of you wanted to use the word cooks. But I said we can't use that yet because we haven't had that word. So cooks is a form of the verb cook, right? But because we have not had this form yet, if you use it in the lesson, you have to count it as a new word. Unless you're up here. And then in that case, you can add 4 forms of old words without counting them as in addition to your new words. All right? So when we're talking about forms of words, so for an instance, in English, you have the word work is our basic form of the word. So maybe in a lesson we used the word worked. And now in this lesson, we want to use the word working. Okay? In lesson 22 and above, it's going to count as a new word. But from lesson 22 to 32, since we've already had a form of that word, we'll count it as a form. Okay? And that'll make more sense when we're actually doing our word control later on. Now, the other thing about the new words is in the health lessons, we can have 12 new words. Add this in here. And in the Bible stories, you can have up to 21 new words. So we make a pretty big jump. But by the time you've gone through 72 lessons of the primer, you will have your student will have learned approximately 800 words or forms of words. It's a lot. By the end of the 2 books, by lesson 72. Kind of depends on how simple the stories are and stuff, okay? So what I'd like to do now, any questions on this so far? Now, if you're doing the word control, there's two kinds of lists that you need to keep. If you look on page 53 and 54, and it's really handy if you have a computer for word control. If you don't, it can be done. But if you have access to a computer for your workshop, this is where it really, really helps. Okay? So for the list, like while your writers are writing, pardon me? Yes. You can have up to 12 new words.
Is it include formulas or not?
Not, but I'm flexible within reason. Okay? So that's where you want to stick fairly close to that, but with 1 or 2 words difference, if it's a nice story, you can just leave them in, all right? But if it's too many more than that, you really have to go back and rewrite things. So for your list, let's say your team, your writing team has turned in lesson 1, and now as the new word person, you've checked the new words, everything's okay. So you're going to write up on the board lesson 1. And at the top of the board, you're going to write the letters that they've been taught so far. So for instance, here in K, A, B, O, N. So our picture words are going to go first. So this, I'm just doing the sample from your book. Kabaka and Akakoba. And you're going to underline them. And that's for your artist. Okay? And then you're going to add your other new words that are in that lesson. Obi, Ana. So this is to help your writers as they're writing. Then they can look back up to the board and they can reference to see what words they've already used. Okay? So then you would write up the next lesson. Akabu. And Oluku. Okay, and so on this lesson, it looks like we have the L is added. Kalaba. And, the L and the U. Huh, they added 2 there. And Alaba. So what happens if you keep a running list of what letters have been used, your writers can look up there if they're going to add a word and say, okay, does that word only use letters we have available? The other thing they can do then is look through and say, okay, is that a new word based on what lessons we've already done? Now, approximately about every 12 lessons, what is helpful if you have the ability is to run off an alphabetized list, print an alphabetized list for your team writers, because it gets hard looking through every lesson to see if you've used a word. You miss stuff very quickly. All right? Now, the second list you're going to want to keep is your own list. Big is relative. That's bigger than that piece. And so if you're keeping a list in the computer, you can keep a list in Excel. And Patty's going to show you some of this here in a little bit. But you want to keep if you look on the next page over, What's handy is if you keep your own out list, and so you can keep a list of the word, the lesson number, and that comes in handy because if you decide you need to change a word like that, oh no, we can't use that word, for some reason we have to use this word, then you know which lesson it first appeared in, and then you can go and make the change everywhere in the primer. So word, lesson number, if it's a picture word or not. And then you can also keep, if whichever language you're doing it, like for us, we keep in English of what the English meaning is for the picture word, just so we can keep track of what picture goes with what word. Okay? Is that everything, Patty? I think so.
Yeah, I'll talk some more about that too.
Okay, Patty will talk some more about that in a little bit. Okay, so you keep the list, one list on the board, but then you also need to keep the computer list, or if you don't keep a computer list, and it's back, can you get in my bag, which is computer bag, which is over by there, and bring that here. If you don't have a computer, or you have a computer but you have no electric or something like that, you can also keep a manual dictionary, if you will. So this was word control for the for the Gujarati language in India. So you can take an exercise book or some other kind of book and then just have each page one of the letters in the alphabet. So here we have the first letter, whatever that one is. I can't read Gujarati. Can you read Gujarati? Then the second letter for the second page, third letter. So you just do that. So then as you get a word that begins with one of those letters, you just write that word in and which lesson number it started in. And so then as a new word control person, if you get the story in, you have to physically go and check each word in this book. Okay, if the word begins with this letter, I come and I look down through and say, okay, did I use that word anywhere? If yes, then it's not a new word. If no, it becomes a new word. All right? Yes, Patty?
If they do that, if they leave lots of space between the words and try to kind of guess where it would come in that set, you know, you'll have room to put all the words in between.
Yeah, well,
Keep it alphabetical.
yeah, you can. But I guess I've just tried to at least keep the first alphabet letter, so.
Yeah.
And if you're go to another area where they use a script other than the Roman script, you can also be the word control person, because you can, it's like a picture. You become a new reader taking your own picture of words. So, but most of you won't have to worry about that. But anyway, so just know it's possible to do it even without the computer, although the computer makes it very, very nice.